So let me open my notepad. So whenever we are talking about, especially for SQL here, so SQL mastery, right? So so every application is completely built on top of the SQL, right? So that is the base. So whenever we are talking about the base here, so overall uh, database tables, how these tables are getting linked to each other, correct? That is also we will going to discuss how you can use that. We know that there is a concept of ER diagram and there is an entity relationship. This is one of the most important concept here. And if you are able to design your database, it is really very, you can say you already achieved the something here. Correct. So before that, there is also concept of what we can say top down and bottom up approach, right? So top down and bottom up approach here. So top down approach is whenever you are developing an application from that UI to database here. If you are, you can say down to up. So down to up, you will create the database first, and based on that, you will start developing your logic, right? And you will start developing applications and UI also, right? Down to up, right? So like this, people used to develop that entire what we can call as entire application based on your database. So there is a concept of a database design, right? So in database design here, right, there is a concept of a particularly entities, right? There is a relationship, right? And attributes. If you will understand this in basic concept for, you will easily understand the entire concept as well, right? And we use that, there is a concept for a ER diagram, correct? Because whenever you wanted to fire any query, you already know that there is a particularly how to write a group by having, and if you know that joins and everything. But how you will identify how many tables and which particular column you need to use it, right? Whenever you wanted to fire a particular query here, correct? So in that scenario, you need to understand the relationship, correct? So in the entity, basically when we are talking about an entity into a real-time scenarios, so entities are, right? Maybe you can say living things, non-living things, or maybe it could be an event, right? So maybe let's say for human, maybe you can take it as a customer, maybe you can say as an employee. These are could be an entity, right? So these are, we can take it as a living things, right? Then there is a non-living, right? Something we can take it as a city, you can take it as a chair, you can take it as a room, hospital. These are non-living things. Then also you need to understand there is another concept of a event. So that is we can call it as a booking. You can talk about something we can call as particularly reservation, right? Then you can take it as a transaction, right? Then you can have a many such other kind of events that could be called as a, what we can say as an entity. You will treat it as an entity. And this entity concept will also be will getting used, right, in terms of your system design, in terms of your domain driven design in your microservices also. And also it will be used for your creating an entire database. And that is one of the most critical tasks people use. And this is, people are facing the problem here. That is called as a database design here, right? And here, when you design the database, this database designed also used, right? Right. To understand your all the functional scenarios, right? And if you are BA or you are working as a particularly any particular application, if you understand that complete flow and you are able to create a proper database design, then only you can win the race. And here is also you will going to use the normalization. ठीक है. So normalization also you will use it to normalize your entire table here. So that is all about the entities. So you need to find out actually how many columns will be there into each particular table and how many tables will be there and how you will create a relationship. So if there is a banking, definitely you will have some different tables, but you need to identify that how many columns will be there into a account table, how many columns will be there into transaction, how many columns will be customer reconciliations, and many such different activities. Correct. So for that, you also need to understand that what are the attributes for each particular entity. So whenever we are talking about each particular entity, then attributes. So these are the nothing but the characteristics. Correct. So characteristics are nothing but if you have a particularly living things, definitely, or maybe customer, or maybe employee, principal, these people you will have always something we can call as definitely all the characteristics. You have first name, last name, address, email ID. These kind of you can say attributes. These attributes will be converted into a letter into a column here, right? And letter column. So every particular now here, whenever you created a columns, right, then also you need to use that normalization so that your first normal form, second normal form, at least three normal form, you should know it. So whenever you are creating your columns, right, so that your primary key has been already identified. There should not be any such attribute should be partially dependent on your primary key if you have multiple columns into your key here. Correct. And there should not be any transitive dependencies in your table where you will have any other non-key column is dependent on the non-key column. That is these are three statements which we are talking about for three normalization forms. Correct. So maybe you can go a little bit deep inside in it for right first normal form and second normal form and third normal form. Correct. I will just repeat it. Right. So first you need to identify the key. Right. Then you need to have a if your second normal form, so first thing is that if it is already normalized into first normal form, then it can go to a second normal form, and it is normalized into second normal form, then it can go to a third normal form. Correct. So that is basically you need to create your tables and normalize your tables in such a way so that you will not face any such problems for something we can call as anomalies for read, write, update, and delete. Right. So majorly add, update, and delete this kind of a challenges you should not face it. That's why we use that different kind of a normalization forms. Correct. So that is majorly one of that critical task you need to do it whenever we are talking about that design any database here. Now when you design the database, then you can come to a particularly in what we can say into a database table, and you can start writing a query here. So I already have my Postgres, right? And I will show you my Postgres here, right? So you can also use a different other databases also. And whenever you are using some other databases, you can use the different databases for your different purposes, right? And there are different comparisons when to use. Some of the people are preferring Postgres, some of the people are preferring Oracle, right? There is also you can say so. These are the vendors, but I can tell you that as a full stack developer, there will not be any major changes. Majorly, SQL syntax will be remain same. Correct. You need to have a little bit difference into some of the commands and like that, but most of the syntax will same as a developer, right? If you will try to fire or create a query or if you will do something. Correct. So you don't need to be worried about as much as very initial level whenever you are not having a, you can say complex queries and complex things if you are writing it. Correct. So that is one of the basic fundamental concept whenever you are writing a query here. So definitely if you wanted to create a query here, so you can write a create, you can say table if you wanted to create it. So let's say I will also show it to you one more simple diagram here, but before, okay. So you can use that create table command here, right? So create table command, which you can try and So like this, you can specify each and every name of the particularly column and then type here. So now this type is also very much important. Whenever you are writing any particular, what we can say, the type, this is very important because which is also very much aligned to your other objects. If you are mapping this particularly a column with any other Java classes or any other Pojo classes. So if you are storing your, what we can say, the amount will also have some decimal digits also. So in that scenario, that will be getting round up if you will store that amount into your integer here. Correct. If you are using a customer name, you cannot store the customer name into any other type of, you can say any other decimal or you can say numeric types. If you are using what we can call as a timestamp or date, then also you need to be very careful because if you are using the timestamp also for processing, in that scenario, you can use the timestamp as well. Correct. So because if you are using that 3:15 and 45 seconds or particularly minutes and second, in that scenario also you can use it different kind of you can see you need to use as a timestamp rather than to a proper date. So you need to choose your data types also very wisely. Correct. First. City. So it is saying customer table is also there. So I will change the name for employee. Okay. So once you have this employee table, then you can start writing that query for a select start from employee, right? So this create query, nobody will going to ask into an interview, but there will be also some indirect questions related to create table, what kind of a database, or you can say when you will use a timestamp, when you will use an integer, when you will, what is the difference between varchar and char, right? Or varchar and text, like this, there are a different data types. So when you will use it, what is the meaning of the varchar basically? There are a different kind of a questions you will see whenever into a create table command here, right? But apart from that, if I wanted to use the non-null, right, and I wanted to make that this particular column will never ever store any null values, then how you will use that non-null checks here, correct? So you need to add also here as a not null, like this, right? So like this, you need to add it. There are this kind of a questions. This is basically scenario based questions. So that is you need to understand, and that is you need to basically prepare for a scenario based question. So nobody will, this is a very simple command. But whenever people are thinking, I know this create table command, nobody will ask you to into even simple writing, but there are scenario based questions also, right? So somebody will say that, okay, so tell me that whenever we wanted to create any database for your banking application, so how many tables you will create it? Then actually your real knowledge will be getting tested how you are creating a table. So then you need to understand that how many table people used to create only 4 or 5 tables. But is that only 4 or 5 tables into a one of the banking application? The banking application will have at least for 80 to 100 tables. So in that scenario, how you will create a table and you will identify their type, right? And you will identify into a table columns and how you will correlate it. Then is what we can say your knowledge will be getting tested for your create table commands. Correct? So that's why it is a very indirect questions. You need to be very much be ready and be prepared for that. That's why I was trying to tell you that understand that concept of your database design. Then on that only you will be able to understand you can fetch the data where you need to use a left outer join, a right outer join, or any other SQL queries. It looks like very simple, but scenario based, many such people face a lot of challenge when you will have a complex joins and complex queries. And I can tell you that if you will try to identify your knowledge, you can try with any other example or scenarios. And let's say if you wanted to create one of the database for your one of the topmost hospital, maybe you can consider as Apollo Hospital. Maybe you can consider any other, you can say Reliance Hospital. And you can try to design entire database. And believe me, it will have at least 20 tables in that particular database. And how you will create this database. So you can take it as an assignment and you can create that entire database and create the relationship also, right? So how these rooms is getting connected and you will create a ER diagram first. And then this ER diagram you can convert into a what we can call is into a later into a database, right? And create a tables and everything. So you need to identify the keys, you need to identify the attributes, and then you need to properly normalize it. So this is one of the assignment you can take it. If you are able to create that entire table like this, then easily, I guess, half of the way you are already done it. So let's take it as a simple example as a chips. Another thing is that if you wanted to insert, that is insert command is also simple. Nobody will ask you to simple question like give me a command for insert. Nobody will ask to you, right? But later I will tell you that how there will be indirect questions for insert command also. And if you really wanted to work as a, you can say as a full stack developer and these things, you should be able to very much comfortable with these SQL commands and design both the sides. So in this particular query, right, I wanted to get that something in this table, right? City wise, that particularly what we can say, the employees, right? So if you guys wanted to try with this, so there is the first question is, right, city wise employees, right? How many, which particular city is, how many employees are there? Correct. Apart from that, you can also, there is another condition also, right? I need majorly city wise, what we can say, the entire calculation, but I don't want any such city details, right? From the northeast or something we can say from that Guwahati or somewhere, right? So I want all the cities details, but not except from the Guwahati. So how you will write this kind of queries and how you will give the details. So this is a simple query which you can say from that what we can have a into one table itself, right? So in this one table, if you will have a S4, here you can see. Here. So I will not give an answer here. That is, you guys can take it up as a question here, right? Then you also need to give that, right? Apart from that count, right? So that is, I can tell you, there is a, you need to use that count and group by. So there is a different aggregate function, right? Mean, max, right? Then there is a count, sum, right? And also you need to have a average. So at least bare minimum, these five functions, how you will use it, that is very much important, correct? Right. So if you wanted to take, then you can use a count start from. I have already given that questions. That questions you can take it up as a right. I guess this is we have not yet executed. Right. Now there is if you wanted to alter, so how you wanted to alter, I guess maybe if you already know that, you can just use the alter command here and you can add one more column. Let's say if you wanted to add a salary, correct? So I will add that one more column here, alter table. Okay. Now you can update the salary, right? And based on that, you can get that salary, right? So if you wanted to get some minimum salary, you can also use that command, select salary from, you can say, right? So you can get that minimum salary. As of now, I am not inserting. That is, you can use that update table and you can set that salary, right? So for updating, update command, you can use that for each and every row. Update table, sorry, employee, set salary, right? Is, let's say, 40,000. Where? So I will update all the salary as of now. And later you can update that based on the condition, right?
Hello,
So
hi,
you,
I'm Sumant.
yeah, Sumant, just 1 minute.
I'm Maria. Mariel. Yeah, good. How are you?
So update also we can do it like this, and then later you can add it here. Correct. So where condition you can add it. So where condition here, where why here. So you can use like this. You can also use like operator, right? So like operator, you can use percent whenever you wanted to use any queries, or then everything will end with the errand. Or if you are using like this, you can use a something if any word contains the Kiran, or if you will use like this means that will start from the Kiran, but end could be anything. So that is you can use a like operator also. Correct. So that is the meaning of the like, but I am using that this. Okay. So we have already updated here. Like this, you can update and you can find it out. So all the employees, if you wanted to find out which is having a salary more than, I need all this employee name which is having that salary, right, which is greater than 40,000, and I need that details, right, and count based on the city wise, right? So that is another question, correct? Then you can also give all that, then we can just say that add one more table, right? That is called as a department, right? So we have already given that command for how to create a table and how to do it, right? Department, correct? So in the department table, there will be a department table, there will be a department ID, department name, right? There will be a department, you can say description, correct? And this department ID will be a foreign key into a, so I will making this things will be little complex. So add another column, that command already given, right? Foreign key into a employee, okay? Like this. Like this, then you will have a, what we can say, employee. And then you need to find it out for, I need all these, you can say, employees from HR department, right? And city is Mumbai, correct? Salary, you can say 20,000, more than 20,000. So in that scenario, what you can do, you can have a something we can call as joins. So you can make a join or you can use a subqueries, right? So I will write that, let's say that table is already created. I am giving a simple join, but you need to uh, use that, fix up that these questions, right? I will just give a simple join here. Start from, where P dot DPT ID is equal to T dot DPT ID, right? And if you wanted to not select, you can also say P dot employee name, comma T dot DPT name. So considering this particularly a table is already getting created, correct? Like this. ठीक है. And you need to create one, you can say foreign key. So you need to create a constant and add that constant also into your table here. So in this scenario, you can use that simple join here, right? And if you wanted to go ahead with the join, and then you can use a different kind of a queries with the group by and having here. So let's say if you will add, there is a one more table here, correct? And this table has a, let's say, company. So this company is basically, right? And that company ID, there will be a company name, right? Then there is a company city, right? Something you can say office or location like this, or maybe a company address. So, and this company ID, right, will also have a foreign key into a department and also into a, you can say, a employee table. So add a column in department and what we can say in the employee both, correct? Like this. So you will have a much more details here, correct? Now, if you wanted to get some more details, so basically, I need all the employees, right? Or maybe departments uh, for a particular city, right? So how many departments are there? And count of an employee on, you can say, the city location for like this. You can use a this kind of a queries, and then you can use, right, something. Then you can use a, let's say key, who is the highest paid employee here, right? So you can use the max, right? Then also there is an important query, who is the second highest, right? Correct. In, you can say, every department. So I need all the people name who is the second highest paid in every department, right? And if you wanted to add some more condition into Bangalore or something like that, that is completely okay. Correct. Then there is a, you can say, add a project here, right? So project will have a project ID. Then you will have a project name. And you will have a project description, start date and end date. Okay. So in that scenario, when you will have a start date and end date, and in this project also you will have a DPT ID. Correct. So this department ID is basically, so let's say if you have software development, in software development there are different projects which is company and working on it, and this project ID will also be having that foreign key into a employee. So add a foreign key in what we can say into a employee table. So like this, you can add that one more foreign key into an employee table. So in employee table, you will have a foreign key for your department ID, also for your project ID also. Okay. And this department will also have a project like this. Correct? Or maybe you can have a department, you will have only project, and like this, you can just use it. Correct? So like this, if you wanted to give uh, all these foreign key into a employee table, that is okay. Otherwise, you can remove that department ID from the employee table and you can give only a project ID, only an employee table here. Correct? So you will have a companies, company have a department, department will have a projects, and projects will have an employee like this. Okay? Correct? Then there is also a something we can say for leave processing, leave management. Okay. In this leave management, then if you wanted to add that something you can say for each particular employee ID. So leave ID, in this after the leave ID, you will have a type of leave, right? Right. You will have a start date, you will have a end date, right? And in that scenario, it will be a start date will be a timestamp, right? And end date will also be a timestamp, because if somebody is taking a half day leave, so in that scenario, you can start put that timestamp also, right? And here you will have an employee ID. Okay. So for that particular employee, how many leaves basically the person has taken, what is the type, what is the start date and end date, right? So in that scenario, correct, if you wanted to find out in which department people have taken highest leaves, correct? Like this, so this way you can understand that how you will make the joins and how you will use the different join columns, correct? And I need all leaves which is totally taken, right? And employee names who has taken leave, right? So in that scenario, what will happen here? All the leaves means all the data from the leave, but only the matching column of your employees. So then you need to use your left outer join also. Okay. And there will be some other join also. So that will be a little more complex here, correct? If you need all the employees and people who have taken the leave, then also you can get that leave and right outer then if you are using leave and employee like this. Okay. So this way you can make it, and we don't need to make unnecessarily joins to improve the performance and all these columns which is participating in join, then also you need to have some questions related to performance. So the first question performance is, if you will use the subqueries for this question or you will use a join here, correct? So if you are just checking up, you can note down the question and note down the table and write it. And joins, right? So first thing is that how you will measure the particularly a performance of this. Is this subquery is taking a time or joins is taking a time? So you can use the explain command, right? Right. This is the simplest way, but explain can give it to you some more details also. That is nothing, but it will give a query plan. So there are many such parameters you can add it and it will give a much more details for a, so cost, you can say row width and many such time and other details you can use from the explain command. So you can go in much more detail about that for something which we can talk about as a query plan. So query plan will help it to you to understand the performance and to get the performance of a particular query. So people used to do that explain command to find out that performance for a particular query whenever you will have a complex queries and complex joins here, right? So which particular table or query a joins is taking a too much time if you have multiple joins in a table. So if you will this uh, query, if you wanted to find it out, there will be a multiple joins, correct? If you are using a left outer join, uh, then also you need to check that how you will create a left outer with the simple joins, correct? Then also you can find out that exactly which particular query will take it a time here. So I will not give a total answer for that. You create a query and then you can prepare the query and use the explain command, right? So explain command, so find out that performance. So you can find out that how much time it has been taken and then how you can optimize it. So optimization techniques, you need to understand that all this your uh, columns which is participating in, as of now, we are using that primary keys to maintain and to match it. But if there are some other columns which we are using into joins, so make sure that that particular columns, if they will have some indexes, it will be always better, correct? So, and you should not have a unnecessary joins. People are getting too much confused when they are making so many queries and different joins, right? So if you will use unnecessary joins, then it will also taking too much time. So then unnecessary joins and the indexes on join columns. That is you need to check it out, right? Correct. And then definitely you can also see that how you are preparing a query. So joins will be always faster than the subqueries. And whenever you are executing a subqueries will be a last query will be executing first and then it will be executing into a reverse order. And there will be a main query, correct? So if you are using a subqueries and joins will be always faster, right? But you need to understand that how you are making the joins and how you are preparing your joins. Correct. So left outer and right outer, I have just given a simple idea how you can use it and where you will use it, right? So in this scenario, right, where we have used the joins here, or you can say select a star query, correct? So you can use a left outer on, correct? Left join on. Like this, you can use it, right? Or if you wanted to use a right join on, right? Like this, you can just check it and this way you can just use the particularly query. Okay. So this way you can just tune it. I guess little bit, if there is a little bit syntax, you can just clear it. But this way you can use a left outer or right join here. Okay. So that is the way you can try and you can find it out. There are joins and performance optimization techniques here, correct? There are some other, also there is a concept of a partitioning, right? So partitioning is also another optimization technique where you can create a different partition of a data so that you can look for a particular partition when you are searching for any data, right? So that is this partitioning. Also, people are using it when you are going to optimize that performance when we are hitting or when we are doing it, correct? Or when we are connecting to any data, or if you wanted to cite. Then there is another question says how primary key works, right? What is the algorithm is or the concept behind it, the primary key, which particular type of you can say algorithm or you can say strategy behind that implementation of your primary key implementation, correct? So that is very much important related to questions related to what is a trigger and cursor, right? So trigger and cursor is also, you can you need to understand that how to create a trigger and how to create a cursor. When you will use a cursor, what are the different type of you can say cursors, right? Implicit, explicit. In case of triggers also, how we will use the triggers and what are the limitation of a triggers also, correct? So majorly that is also you need to have a fair idea about it, right? Normally we don't use the cursors because cursors we use it inside that stored procedures only, right? When we wanted to search some data, then after, or you can say select some data, and if you wanted to update the data into some other table, or if you based on some condition you wanted to perform something. So if you wanted to write some logic like this, we use the stored procedure with cursors and then we will perform it. Trigger it some event if you wanted to trigger something when you insert a data into particular table. After that you wanted to do something, insert into some other table, or so there is a different trigger on adding a data into a table, deleting or maybe updating any data. So there are a different kind of you can say triggers which you can trigger it the event, right? When you wanted to have a particularly any data insert, update, delete, or any other operations like that, correct? So you can read about little bit trigger and cursors. So there is a questions related to trigger and cursors, right? That will be, so people don't go into too much deep about the trigger and cursors as far as that you can say web developer. But if you are a database developer, you need to have a fair idea about your exception handling, stored procedure, functions, right? Difference between stored procedure and functions, when you will use a stored procedure, when you will use the functions, right? What are the limitations, correct? So that is also very much important, and when you are going to use it, correct? So this is also another kind of a questions, right? Then later, if you wanted to go with the performance optimizations, so how you will create that related to deployments, right? So majorly, will you be going to use, you can say creating through a Docker container or installation through a, you can say, or you will go with the serverless on to AWS or some other places. Right. So is also very much important, right? Because when we go create the database over the AWS or some other platform, in that scenario, it will, you can have a, you can say high availability concept and implementation facility as well, right? So you can create a standby and our primary, secondary kind of a database setup as well. Another thing is that you can create a read replica also, correct? Or maybe you can implement one of that caching also on top of this database also. So there are many such, you can say performance optimization design and implementation, which is not for a developer actually, it is for people who are doing the design or architect level. Correct. So this is also very much important when we are talking about particularly for database optimizations. There is a concept, then there is a questions related to when you will use a NoSQL, when you will use a SQL, right? Difference between SQL and NoSQLs, right? And if you will go with the NoSQL, then there can be some questions related to NoSQLs also if they are looking for little bit knowledge about the NoSQLs, right? Then there is a also questions they can ask for related to your AWS if you are using. So if let's say for AWS Aurora or this kind of database if you are using, right? or Athena or any other AWS. So these questions or RDS related questions they can ask for AWS. If you are using any other databases from MongoDB, if they are using it, so they will ask for some of the questions related to MongoDB. If they are having a mandatory skills for a MongoDB, so they will ask for little bit MongoDB related questions. Correct. But majorly, if you will look for a purely simple RDBMS related questions, so group by having right related joins related questions, right? And there are some other queries which is you can use it related to man mix, second highest. So there are some top 20 queries which you can just look for it and you can find out which is you can get the top 20 queries and you can just try and do some practice. Correct. So that's why that's the way you can do it. You can say for database and SQL related preparations. Correct. But before that, you need to be have a very fair idea about your ER diagram, how to create a diagram or like this. If you'll understand properly the database, it will be very simple and easy to fetch the data or perform some other operations here. So that is from my side here. I guess